Just so we're clear, Liam said, leaning forward, his voice oozing arrogance. We wanted to tell you now, so there's no confusion later. Everything's going to us. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The lasagna on my plate, the same one Mom said she'd make to lure me home, suddenly felt like lead in my stomach. For a moment, the dining room fell into an awkward silence, broken only by the distant hum of traffic outside our quiet suburban cul-de-sac. My heart thudded in my chest as I looked across the polished cherrywood table at Liam and Lyanna, my younger twin siblings. Both were wearing smug expressions, their eyes glittering with self-satisfaction. "Excuse me." My voice trembled, despite my best effort to keep it steady. "What do you mean, everything?" Exactly what he said. Mom cut in, her tone sharp. The fake smile she'd worn earlier was gone, replaced by a steely set to her jaw. "Your father and I have finalized our will, and we wanted you to hear it from us directly. The house, the lake cottage, everything is going to Liam and Lyanna." I turned to Dad, searching his face for a hint of hesitation, some sign that this was a mistake or a cruel joke. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. His gaze was fixed on the silverware, his expression unreadable. The silence dragged painfully until he finally spoke, voice quiet and carefully measured. "Sarah, you have to understand our reasoning," he said, folding his hands. "You've done incredibly well for yourself. Your mother and I are proud of your success, your career, your independence. Liam and Lyanna, they're still finding their way. They need more support." I blinked, hard, forcing back the sting in my eyes. Support. For years, I'd quietly taken on the role of a safety net, paying off the mortgage, covering Liam's constant tuition changes, funding Lyanna's whims and expensive hobbies. I did it all because I believed it was my duty as the eldest. Apparently, none of it mattered. My heart twisted as I looked at my parents' faces. They were closed off, hardened, unmoved. "This is my reward," I said, voice low but steady. "For covering your mortgage the last 4 years? For the tuition bills? For the $30,000 I put into renovating that lake cottage last summer? You're leaving me nothing because I succeeded." Mom sighed, her frustration theatrical. "This is exactly why we didn't want to tell you. You always make it about money, Sarah. It's never about family with you." Heat rose in my cheeks as my fists clenched under the table. "It was always about family for me," I shot back. "Every sacrifice I made was because of family. Because you asked. Because you said family sticks together." Liam scoffed and leaned back, crossing his arms. "You act like some kind of martyr. Nobody forced you to help. You just liked playing the hero." Lyanna chuckled softly, twirling a strand of her perfectly curled hair. "Maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us." Her words hit harder than I expected, cutting through years of denial. But what hurt more was the silence that followed. My parents didn't defend me. They didn't correct her. They just let it hang in the air like truth. They'd always protected Liam and Lyanna, cuddled them, excused every bad decision. And now, after everything, I was the one being painted as selfish. The last of my patience burned away. "You're right, Liam," I said coldly, and for the first time, I truly meant it. "I know no one forced me," I finally said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "But starting today, no one gets to guilt me into being this family's ATM anymore. I'm done." I shoved my chair back and stood, ignoring their stunned expressions. The warm scent of marinara and garlic still lingered in the air, a cruel reminder of what I'd hoped would be a comforting family dinner. Instead, it had become an ambush, a rejection, a humiliation served in the very home I helped pay for. I grabbed my coat from the hallway. The front door slammed shut behind me with a sharp, final thud, cutting me off from their voices that no longer mattered. Outside, the cool Portland air hit me like a slap, clearing my head. But my heart still throbbed with disbelief. My own family had used me, discarded me, and left me hollow. I climbed into my car, slammed the door, and gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands as tears finally spilled down my cheeks. During the silent drive back to my apartment downtown, memories surged. Every financial sacrifice, every canceled vacation, every sleepless night spent poring over spreadsheets to make sure they were comfortable. I had done it all silently, without complaint, out of love or maybe obligation. But clearly, None of it had ever really mattered. My apartment felt unfamiliar when I stepped inside, like the betrayal had tainted everything. I poured myself a generous glass of Cabernet, the expensive bottle I had been saving for a special occasion. Tonight's bitter revelation felt like occasion enough. Settling onto the couch, I opened my banking app. The numbers stared back at me like a slap. Parents' mortgage, $1,800. Utilities, $600. Recurring payments I'd been making for years. Without hesitation, I canceled them both. A quiet defiance rose in my chest as the confirmation messages flashed. Something in me had shifted. As the night wore on, I replayed the dinner again and again, my initial anger giving way to a deeper sadness. The rejection hadn't just been about money, it had been emotional. A lifetime of being second best had finally been confirmed. And yet, in the middle of the ache, something else stirred. Liberation. For the first time in years, I felt unshackled. My worth was no longer tied to their approval. My value wasn't in my bank account or how many problems I could fix. It was time to reclaim my life, free from expectations that had turned into chains. I knew they wouldn't take this quietly. There would be calls, guilt trips, maybe even retaliation. But I didn't care. Tonight had marked a turning point. No matter how hard they pushed, I was done being their fallback. Done being disrespected under the guise of duty. From this moment forward, my life was mine. I drained the last of the wine and set the glass down with a soft clink, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. They'd invited me home to announce I was getting nothing. But they'd accidentally given me something far more valuable. Freedom. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The smug curl of Liam's lips, the icy mockery in Lina's eyes. But what hurt most was the silence from my parents. That silence had cut deeper than anything my siblings said. By morning, I had no tears left. I dragged myself out of bed, brewed strong coffee, and sat at the kitchen table while the morning news murmured in the background. But I didn't hear it. I was drowning in memory. Had I really been blind? Or had I just chosen to ignore the truth, desperate to believe my family valued me for more than my wallet? My phone buzzed, vibrating sharply against the wood. Mom. My stomach twisted, and I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready, or maybe I just wasn't willing, to hear her voice. A minute later, a notification blinked. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Sarah, please stop being so dramatic. Mom's voice rang with familiar exasperation, laced with just enough guilt to sting. Call me back. You know family doesn't treat each other like this. A hollow laugh escaped my lips. Family. Her favorite weapon. Manipulation. In my family, that was love's twisted twin. Family only mattered when it justified their needs. Never mind, I muttered to myself, deleting the voicemail from Mom and setting my phone aside, determined not to crumble beneath her well-rehearsed guilt trips. In the days that followed, the calls multiplied. First Mom, then Dad, and eventually Liam and Lina. They took turns, cycling through condescending lectures and sarcastic pleas, none of which held even a trace of remorse. Just growing frustration that their financial lifeline had been abruptly severed. After a particularly venomous call from Lina, who accused me of being selfish, jealous, and drunk on independence, I blocked them all. And then silence. A fragile, unfamiliar peace settled over me. Beneath that quiet, though, pulsed a dull ache I wasn't sure would ever completely fade. Still, I welcomed the stillness. I threw myself into work. Benet Construction's newest project, a sleek medical complex in Sacramento, demanded everything I had. Meetings, site visits, blueprint revisions, the things I used to handle with ease now felt like lifelines. Distractions. I took every opportunity to stretch my workday, volunteered for extra travel, anything to avoid facing the emptiness that lingered in my quiet apartment. 3 weeks passed with no contact. Slowly, I let myself believe maybe they'd accepted it. My absence, my boundaries. Maybe they'd finally moved on. I should have known better. The message came on a Friday, lighting up my screen like a flare. Family meeting tonight. Sarah, you owe it to us to be there. My pulse spiked. Owe it to us. The entitlement was staggering. I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. And yet curiosity nagged at me. Or maybe it was that stubborn ember of hope, one I hadn't fully extinguished, that maybe this time would be different. Before I could talk myself out of it, I replied with a single word. Fine. Pulling into my parents' driveway felt surreal. Liam's overpriced motorcycle gleamed in the driveway beside Lionel's obnoxiously blue Kia, two perfect symbols of entitlement, side by side. I sat in my car for a long moment, dread coiling in my stomach. This house, once a place of comfort, now felt like enemy territory. Mom answered the door, her forced smile brittle with tension. "Sarah, glad you decided to come," she said coolly, stepping aside to let me in. "And Daisy's here too." That caught me off guard. Aunt Daisy sat quietly in the corner of the living room, her eyes warm but guarded. She rarely involved herself in family conflict. Her presence didn't calm me, it warned me. They meant business. I sat down opposite her as Liam and Lionel entered, their glares sharp enough to cut glass. Dad cleared his throat. "We called this meeting to clear the air," he began, his tone stern. "Your mother and I thought you'd see reason by now. Obviously, we were mistaken." I clenched my fists, my voice trembling with restrained fury. "See reason? You cut me out completely. After everything I've done, every mortgage payment, every tuition bill, and you want me to see reason?" Mom rolled her eyes. "Stop exaggerating. You helped, yes, but you're the oldest. It was your responsibility. Liam and Lina deserve stability. It's not our fault you chose work over family." A bitter laugh escaped me, raw and unfiltered. "I chose work over family?" I repeated, the words catching in my throat. "No. I chose work because you needed my money. I skipped vacations, friendships, relationships, my life, so you could keep pretending everything was fine. So you could live in comfort and call it love. I sacrificed everything so you wouldn't have to." The room fell silent, and for once, not even Lionel had something smug to say. "Oh, spare us the dramatics," Liam scoffed, arms folded with that smug grin that had always made my skin crawl. "We never asked for your pity, or your charity." "That's right," Lina sneered, her tone sharp as glass. "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with being the family savior, you'd actually have a life of your own." Heat rushed to my face, humiliation blooming like fire beneath my skin. I looked to Aunt Daisy for backup, but she only shifted uncomfortably, her silence louder than any words. And my parents, stone-faced, silent, eyes cast elsewhere, anywhere but at me. I stood, the chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. "You know what?" I said, my voice tight with fury. "You're right. Believing I mattered here, that was my mistake. I won't make it again." I turned for the door, heart pounding, when Dad's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "If you walk out now, Sarah, don't expect to be welcome back." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. A lifetime of swallowing rage and chasing scraps of affection boiled over. "That's fine," I replied, voice cold and trembling. "I've never felt welcome here anyway." Outside, the cold air bit at my skin, but the tears that fell burned hotter. Each step toward my car felt heavier than the last, a slow descent into the realization I could no longer outrun. They didn't value me. I was never family. I was convenient, disposable, replaceable. Back at my apartment, I locked the door behind me with finality. No more access. No more chances to hurt me. I sat in the dark, silence wrapping around me like armor, finally safe in my solitude. A knock startled me, heart jumping into my throat. I crept to the door and peeked through the peephole. Aunt Daisy. I opened the door slowly. She didn't speak, just wrapped her arms around me in a warm, wordless embrace. I crumbled. "I'm sorry, Sarah," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "They're wrong. You deserve so much better." Her words cracked something deep inside. Years of hurt, of betrayal, of quiet endurance, spilled out in tears I couldn't stop. Daisy held me, steady and soft, while I fell apart. When the storm finally quieted, she spoke again, her tone steel beneath the sadness. "They won't say it, but they're scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of facing what they've done." Later, alone again, I stared at my banking app. $1,800. Mortgage. $600. Utilities. Dozens more labeled family help. Each line a memory of sacrifice. of expectation, of guilt. My hand hovered over the cancel button, breath shallow. Despite everything, the guilt still whispered in my ear. Family sticks together, Sarah. Family sacrifices. But tonight had burned that illusion to ash. Their betrayal wasn't just cruel, it was clear. I wasn't their daughter. I was their ATM. I squeezed my eyes shut, Liam's smug face flashing through my mind. That was all it took. Click. Mortgage canceled. Click. Utilities gone. Relief surged through me like a lightning strike, leaving me breathless. For the first time in years, I wasn't their lifeline. I was free. I must have fallen asleep on the couch, because dawn was creeping across the Portland skyline when I woke, soft lavender and gold pouring through the windows. My phone buzzed violently on the table, dragging me back to reality. Mom. Dread coiled instantly in my stomach. I picked up. Sarah, what have you done? She snapped, skipping any pretense. The bank called. Foreclosure, Sarah. You had no right. I had every right, I said calmly. That mortgage was never my responsibility. I paid it because I chose to. And after everything that's happened, I'm choosing not to now. You're our daughter, she screeched. You owe us respect. I owe you nothing, I said, steel finally in my spine. Respect goes both ways. You made your choice. Now I've made mine. Sarah, she began again, but now her voice cracked, fear and desperation bleeding through. I hung up, not in cruelty, in peace, because this time I wasn't going back. I cut her off, firm, steady. I'm sorry you're upset, Mom, but I can't do this anymore. Goodbye. I hung up before I could second-guess myself, hands trembling from the weight of years collapsing in a single click. The calls didn't stop. First Dad, then Lionel, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Each voicemail a carefully packaged mix of guilt, manipulation, and thinly veiled threats. I let them roll into silence, one by one, until the noise faded into nothing. Finally, I turned off my phone. The quiet that followed was unnerving at first, then empowering. Weeks passed. Slowly, life began to stitch itself back together. Work no longer felt like a frantic escape, it became fulfilling again. I booked the trip to Italy I had dreamed about for years. For once, I spent my money on me. A new kind of independence settled over me like sunlight after a long storm, warm, unfamiliar, healing. Loneliness still came sometimes, mostly at night, a sharp echo of family ties that had been violently cut. But even then, the emptiness felt better than being used. Then came Sacramento, a 3-day trip for final inspections at our firm's newest medical complex, Project Lelix. The assignment felt perfectly timed, a welcome reprieve from both sadness and memory. But that relief vanished the moment I returned. It was late Friday evening when I arrived at my apartment, luggage in hand, exhaustion heavy in my limbs. But as I neared the door, I froze. My stomach dropped. Foam, thick, hard, grotesque, oozed from every crack of my doorframe. Dried solid. My door was completely sealed shut. Panic rose fast and hot. I touched the foam. Rock solid. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. Sabotage. Only one name came to mind, Liam. Furious, I called building management and paced the hallway until a weary locksmith arrived, jaw tightening when he saw the damage. Someone really didn't want you getting in, he muttered, carefully chiseling away. Deliberate job. I pictured Liam's smug face as he sprayed the foam, satisfied with himself, punishing me for daring to say no. By the time the door opened, it was nearly midnight. I was too wired to sleep, rage burning like wildfire through my veins. Then I remembered the hallway security cam. Hands shaking, I pulled up the footage. Fast-forwarded. Scanned. Then there he was. Liam. Baseball cap pulled low. Hoodie up. Face partially obscured but unmistakably him. I watched, heart pounding, as he sprayed the sealant around my door with methodical cruelty. He even smiled. It wasn't just petty revenge. It was personal. I saved the footage and sat there for a long time, torn. He was my brother. Could I really turn him in? But this wasn't a sibling fight. This was vandalism. Harassment. Criminal. I called Aunt Daisy. Sarah, she said softly, if you don't hold Liam accountable, he'll never stop. Protecting him isn't love. It's enabling. Her words landed like stone. I filed a police report the next morning and handed over the footage. That's when the firestorm hit. Voicemails came flooding in. Accusations. Fury. Names I hadn't heard since childhood, now screaming through my speaker, vindictive, cold traitor. But underneath the rage, I heard something else for the first time, fear. They knew they had lost control. Then came Dad. His voice was brittle, too calm to be sincere. What will it take, Sarah, for you to drop the charges? I didn't hesitate. 33,000, I said flatly. The exact cost of repairs. He exploded. That's extortion. No, I said, voice steady and cold. That's consequences. Liam vandalized my home. He can pay the damages, or he can face the charges. His choice. He hung up. The next morning, a bank transfer landed in my account. The note read, final payment, exactly $33,000. Bitterness dripped from every letter, but I didn't care. I wasn't smiling because of the money. I was smiling because for once I hadn't backed down. For once, I chose me that I had forced them to face something they'd never expected, consequences. Liam's petty act of vandalism hadn't broken me. Instead, it solidified something new inside me. Independence. Strength. I was no longer bound to their guilt trips, their endless needs, or their refusal to see me as anything but a means to an end. Standing in the doorway of my newly repaired apartment, I took a deep breath, letting the weight of it all settle over me. Bittersweet, yes, but still a victory. My family had betrayed me, yes. They had hurt me, used me, nearly hollowed me out. But in the process, they had unknowingly set me free. Now, at last, I could build a life on my own terms, one where I answered to no one but myself. After the incident with Liam, the silence from my family was deafening. Days turned into weeks. No angry messages. No desperate voicemails. Nothing. At first, the quiet was a relief. But soon, it shifted, becoming a dull, oppressive reminder of everything I'd lost. They had chosen sides again. And once more, I wasn't the one they chose. Then came the rumors. Aunt Daisy called one evening, her voice low with concern. Sarah, your mom's been talking. She's telling people you abandoned the family. That you're trying to make your parents homeless. I sat up straight, cold washing over me. That's insane, I whispered, my grip tightening on the phone. They left me no choice. I know that, Daisy said gently. But others don't. They think you just stopped helping out of greed. The accusation cut deep. All those years, quiet sacrifices, canceled vacations, postponed dreams, and now I was being rewritten as the villain. My efforts erased. My story twisted to protect their pride. I began pacing, anger rising in waves. For so long, I had remained silent, obedient, but not anymore. I sat down at my laptop, determination burning through the ache. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I wrote everything. The years of payments, the tuition checks, the emotional manipulation, Liam's sabotage. Every dollar, every scar. When I hit post, my hands trembled, but I felt lighter. Finally, my truth was out there. The response came fast. Some comments were full of compassion and disbelief, shocked that I had been exploited for so long. Others scolded me for sharing private family matters in public. I expected that. Then came my mother's furious voicemail. How dare you humiliate us like this? You had no right. Her voice lit a fuse inside me. I called her back without hesitation. I had no right. I snapped, my voice shaking. You lied to everyone. After everything I've done, you still painted me as selfish, just to save face. We didn't lie, she hissed. You abandoned us. All because we chose to help your siblings, who needed it most. No, I said, voice low and tight. You abandoned me the moment you decided my support didn't matter. You taught Liam and Lionel to expect everything and give nothing. And now you're paying the price for that. There was a pause. Then she whispered, cold and brittle, you've destroyed this family. No, I replied, quiet but firm. You did that, long before I stopped paying the bills. I hung up. My chest heaved. My heart pounded. Tears blurred my vision, guilt swirling deep in my gut. Had I truly destroyed my own family? Was it wrong to stand up for myself? To finally demand something in return for all I'd given? A knock at the door pulled me from my spiraling thoughts. It was Aunt Daisy. Without a word, she pulled me into a hug, tight, warm, and unconditional. The kind of support I hadn't realized I needed. "I'm proud of you," she murmured. "You did the right thing." And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I almost believed it too. I had longed for this moment, quiet validation in the wake of chaos. "Sarah, your post changed everything," Aunt Daisy said gently as she stepped into my apartment. "Some family members finally see the truth now. Your mom hid all your sacrifices over the years. They had no idea." I exhaled slowly, a strange mix of relief and sadness tightening my chest. "Does it even matter anymore?" I asked. "It does," Daisy said firmly, reaching for my hand. "Your voice matters. You deserve recognition for what you've done. Your parents chose dishonesty, but that doesn't mean you have to live under their shadow anymore." Her words sank deep, seeds of strength finding fragile purchase in the bruised soil of my heart. Slowly, the sharp anguish began to dull, replaced by something unfamiliar but welcome, cautious hope. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't silent. The truth was painful. Yes, but it was mine. A few days later, my phone buzzed. A message from Lyanna. "Thanks a lot. Everyone hates us now. Hope you're proud." I stared at the screen, stunned by how numb I felt. The old me would have dropped everything to fix it, to smooth things over, to apologize. But now I saw things clearly. Their approval had always been conditional, tied to sacrifice and submission. It had never been real. I typed a reply, calm and unshaken. "I'm done apologizing for your choices. Maybe now you'll finally learn responsibility." She never responded. Weeks passed. The storm calmed. The harsh judgments from distant relatives began to fade like echoes in an empty room. Without my support, my parents struggled financially. They picked up part-time jobs to stay afloat. Liam remained reckless and defiant, still blaming the world for his failures. Lyanna clung to her delusions of becoming a social media influencer, going nowhere fast. And me? My life blossomed, quietly, steadily on my own terms. I was free, not just financially, but emotionally. I had faced the truth, endured the fallout, and I had survived. When my parents later cut me from their will, I thought it would hurt more. But the blow they intended to deliver felt more like a release. They hadn't left me with nothing. They had, without realizing it, gifted me the most priceless thing of all, the courage to finally choose myself. 6 months passed. The silence they left behind no longer haunted me, it became space for something better. In that silence, I rebuilt. I poured myself into my career, earning a promotion that came with a corner office and a salary I once only dreamed about. My paycheck belonged to me now. No more midnight transfers to cover Liam's mess or Lyanna's latest whim. No more mortgage payments that drained me. Every dollar was a step toward freedom. Proof that choosing myself wasn't selfish, it was survival. With new financial freedom, I booked a 2-week trip to Italy, something I'd put off for years out of guilt. Standing on a balcony in Florence as the sun dipped below the skyline, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. Joy without guilt. Fulfillment without sacrifice. Back home, I joined a hiking group and began reclaiming my weekends. On one trail, I met Alex. His quiet strength and warm laughter were like balm on old wounds. He didn't ask for anything but gave everything that mattered: kindness, patience, respect. Months passed in quiet happiness. Then, one cold November evening, there was a knock at my door. It was Aunt Daisy, bundled in her favorite sweater, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. Without a word, she stepped inside and pulled me into a hug. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You deserve every bit of happiness you found." We sat together as night fell, warmth rising between sips and shared silence. "Your parents still blame you," she said gently. "But they won't change. You have. You chose yourself, and that's brave." I looked down at my hands. "I still think about them," I admitted. Not because I regret walking away, but because it hurts to know they never really loved me the way I loved them. Daisy squeezed my hand. "Sometimes family isn't about blood," she said. "It's about who truly sees your worth." Her words filled a quiet emptiness I hadn't even realized still lingered. Weeks later, whispers from extended relatives, painted a grim picture. My mother now worked early shifts at a local diner, exhaustion heavy in her posture. My father labored at a hardware store, physically demanding work for someone his age. Liam had quit yet another job. Lyanna remained lost in her influencer fantasy, chasing likes instead of stability. On Christmas Eve, instead of mourning what I'd lost, I celebrated what I'd found. I hosted a small gathering, close friends, laughter light. Aunt Daisy was there, smiling as she watched me move through the evening with ease, surrounded by warmth I had built myself. As night fell and the last guest left, I stood alone at my window, watching Portland glow against the dark. The pain was still there, like a fading scar but no longer raw. It had shaped me, taught me, freed me. My parents thought cutting me out would devastate me. But their rejection, it became my liberation. They left everything to Liam and Lyanna, but they gave me something far more valuable, the power to reclaim my life. And now, I pass the question to you. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have continued sacrificing for a family that only took? Or would you have walked away, even if it meant losing them forever? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story too.